taken off from Chandigarh, so hopefully they will be with us in a short while. But in the meantime, we are going to start this very interesting panel discussion today with a very power-packed panel which we have here. Of course, in 2 minutes, we'll have the rest of the panelists up here. Media as an influencer. A very warm welcome to all of you here. A special welcome to our guests of honor, Sinjoy, Gauri, Ruby, we're waiting still for Pratibha, Prahlad, Poonam Dhillon, and Veer Sangvi to join us. Our President, Ficky Flo, Jayanti Dalmia, past presidents, Presidium, governing body members, and of course, my fellow Flo members and special guests here today. It is indeed a matter of honor and pride to have such accomplished and illustrious panel amongst us. We are very grateful to them for taking their time off to be with us. Through the years, media is the voice of the common man. It is this very medium that binds us all together and plays an important role in establishing and perpetuating social norms. It also governs our thoughts and actions. Ficky Flo Pune chapter is very privileged to bring this session for Flo National. My special thanks to our chairperson from Pune, Neelam Syolekar, and treasurer Sonia Rao for the support in making this event possible. It is my honor to introduce the Wind Beneath Our Wings, the powerful visionary lady who helms the 19 chapters in our national.
पदो नीचा प्रायेण दुस्सहो भवति. Direct sunlight does not affect us as much as when we walk barefoot on a sand dune, influenced by the same sun. Similarly, a mediocre person or an event becomes great or profound due to others' influence. This others' influence is the influence of media I'm talking about. Namaskar. A very good afternoon to everyone. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you to this very interesting session on media as an influencer. We have with us a power-packed panel. The media personality, Veer Sangvi ji, will be joining us shortly. Poonam Dhillon will also be joining us. Sinjoy Chaudhary, National Affair Editor, Times Now. Gauri Divedi, Consulting Editor, WION. Ruba Dingra ji, Media Personality. Pratibha Prahlad ji will be joining us. She's a renowned Bharatnatyam dancer. Anupam Kher ji and Navika Kumar ji will be joining us. Their flight has taken off, so we hope they'll be here. This, because of the weather, is really playing havoc today. Anyways, on behalf of Ficky Ladies Organization, a warm welcome to our esteemed dignitaries. It cannot be denied that media is the most powerful entity as it controls the minds of the masses. The media influences people's behavior nowadays. Information can be spread only after a few clicks of a button, whether it is true, false, speculation, or gossip. According to Global Web Index, 54% of daily media time is online. Also, on a typical day, 12% of people watch online TV, 10% listen to online radio, 12% read online press, 28% use social networking sites, 13% are microblogging, and 9% read or write blogs, and 17% do other things. This means there is a constant access to news and the goings on in the world. With the aid of links from social media sites, as you can receive news so quickly that all information, whether it's true, false, or an opinion. The influence of social media is also on an all-time high. Social media is a part of everyday life for over 4.6 billion people worldwide. Another very important dimension of media is that it's most pervasive and one of the most powerful of the many influences on how we view men and women. We strongly believe in a transformative role media can play in achieving gender equality in societies. By creating gender-sensitive and gender-transformative content and breaking gender stereotypes. By showing women in leadership roles and as experts on a diversity on topics on a daily basis, not as an exception. Media can work in collaboration with the government and the civil society to produce gender transformative content and to develop self-regulatory equality policies, including access to decision-making positions. Media can really do a lot. We at Flow strongly believe that creating gender equality in content, workplace, and management can transform the way media influences the masses. I must mention here that Flow is one of the oldest and most recognized chambers of commerce and the largest chamber of commerce in Southeast Asia. It caters to women entrepreneurs and women professionals across 19 pan-India chapters, and Delhi is its headquarters with 8,000 plus members. Since 39 years of existence, Flow has been working towards promoting gender equality and helping women claim their rightful place in society. We aim to equip our members with adequate knowledge, skills in diverse areas, and holistically empower them with the ability and the confidence to be able to exercise their power for the benefit of self or the community. Today, here we have stalwarts from the media industry who have immense experience in their respective fields, and it is an excellent opportunity for us to be enriched with their insights and expertise. We look forward to a very, very interesting session. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you, Jayanti ji. You started with a very thought-provoking introduction, and it's going to be power-packed, I really believe. May I now request you to please felicitate our guests, a token of appreciation to Pratibha Prahlad, please. May I request our past president, Mrs. Kusum Ansal, to please come forward and felicitate our guest, Gauri. Kusum ji, aap aiye. I'll just take it from her. May I request our past president, Mrs. Malvika Rai, to please felicitate Shinjoy. Welcome, Poonam ji. Please join us high. May I request the Pune chairperson, Neelam Siolekar, to please come forward and felicitate Poonam Dhillon. Come here. Neelam, come. May I request Poonam Mahajan to felicitate Ruby Dingra. Poonam ji to please felicitate Ruby. Neelam, aaja. She's felicitating. Excuse me, give it to Thank you. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to you our esteemed panelists. Jayanti ji has already told you something about them, just a little more, not that you all don't know, they're all household names. But Poonam Dhillon, as you all know, is a renowned actress and politician, a former Femina Miss India. She is best known for her 1979 film Noori. She still looks the same. She has been very active with social causes like drug awareness, AIDS awareness, family planning, and organ donation. She has been a prominent speaker at the SAARC Business Summits in Kathmandu and Delhi and was appointed cultural ambassador. She was also a speaker at the Mind event in 2012. She, along with other celebrities, participated in a show supporting the Save and Empower the Girl Child in collaboration with the Leelavati Hospital in 2017. Our next panelist, Srinjoy Chaudhary. He's the National Affairs Editor, Times Now. He has worked for the Statesman and the Telegraph in the past. He has also authored 2 books, Dispatches from Kargil and Flight into Fear, Story of IC-814. Welcome, sir. Our next panelist for today, Gauri Divedi. She's a seasoned journalist, acclaimed author, and a prolific commentator and writer with over 70 years of experience in journalism. Gauri has written and spoken on several issues, especially those related to the economy and strategic affairs. Her first book, Blinkers Off, How Will the World Counter China, has been very well received in India and international publications. On matters related to economy and strategic affairs, Gauri has been invited to participate in global discussions hosted by the world-renowned organizations like Hudson Institute and Rand Corporation. Welcome, Gauri. She is also a trained classical dancer and an outstanding artist. Our third panelist, Pratibha Prahlad. Padma Shri awardee, Pratibha Prahlad is a highly respected performer, choreographer, author, scholar, arts administrator, educator, guru, and a cultural multiplier. A preeminent classical dancer and scholar, Pratibha Prahlad has performed all over India and over 80 countries in a career spanning 45 years. Pratibha Prahlad heads the Prasiddha Foundation and Forum for Arts Beyond Borders, both of which she has established into premier cultural organizations of the country. She is the only artist of her generation on an Indian My Stamp of Rs. 5 released by the Department of Posts and Telegraphs in her honor. Pratibha Prahlad has been conferred the Padma Shri in 2016 and Sangeet Natya Academy in 2001. Welcome, Ms. Prahlad. Last but not the least, our next and fourth panelist, fifth now, Ruby Dingra, who is going to actually be the anchor for the evening. She leads editorial operations and initiatives at News Checker in her former avatar as NDTV, India's leading national news network. She was a news anchor, supervising producers and senior output editor. Her over a decade-long career encompasses groundbreaking reportage from conflict zones and reporting on terrorist incidents. I'm sure you'd like to hear about that. Election campaigns and gender issues. She has worked on many award-winning shows, including NDTV's Emmy-nominated coverage of Kashmir floods in 2014. Our topic, media and cinema as an influencer, is the need of the hour. During the last 2 years of the pandemic, we have all been confined to our homes, and most of us have used the medium of media and cinema as an interface to be in touch with the happenings within our country and globally. It has been a medium of connecting people and cultures, news, politics, and entertainment, binding one and all. Hence, the question always remains, does this medium influence our decisions and our behavioral patterns? Today, let us hear from our expert and eminent panel, how does media work as an influencer? Good, bad, ugly, I leave it to you all to take over from here. Ruby, I hand it over the floor to you, and of course, later question answer from the audience. Thank you.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jayantiji, for having us over. Thank you for this opportunity and that lovely introduction, Sabinaji. We're here to talk about media as an influencer, which is not something new, and Jayantiji has already spoken about how important it is in her opening remarks. In fact, the influence that media has had has only increased over the last, say, 4 to 5 decades, and with the advent of social media, it's only going to increase more as the different kinds of media formats become more and more ingrained into the habits of how we consume news. We're surrounded by information. We're constantly consuming information through one medium of communication or not. So the term media covers a very large spectrum of things, and we have with us a very esteemed panel here who represent different sectors of media. We have people from television, from news, from theatre, from arts and culture. So we're going to first start by just outlining what are some of the things that we could possibly talk about. As Sabina ji was saying, has it had a largely good effect, a bad effect? That is up for the panelists here to enlighten us with. How do different mediums impact your mind and impact the mind of society at large? Different mediums have different inherent values, a different inherent their own pluses and minuses, and therefore this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about sector specific challenges within the media, and also the challenge of social media. Is it an ally for that we can work with when we work in traditional media, or is this something that we need to kind of work around? So I'm going to invite Srinjoy ji first to have his opening remarks on the topic today.
Oh, what? Yeah, I'm actually very flattered. No one's called me G in about 100 years. So that's very nice of you. Usually, the world is flat. So, yeah, the world is flat in a media space. So there are 22-year-old people who are saying, Sanjay, come here. That's how it works. No. Now, very seriously, this business of influence, it's actually something very important, and we should dwell with very carefully. I have to start with someone who died like many years ago, just about. And this is Winston Churchill. And he said that democracy is the worst form of government, except that all the others that have been tried are worse. Now, if you have to have democracy, one of the pillars of democracy is really free speech and the ability to have a free press. If you have no free speech, if you have no free press, then you don't have a democracy. You have a sham democracy. It's as simple as that. Because the free press, for all the warts, for all the problems, for all the troubles, has the power to act at the worst of times, to influence the influential. I think that's the most crucial part of the entire thing. That's the bit. So, like democracy, a free press is absolutely essential. Now, why do you need a free press? Why do you need to influence all these people? Because what happens if there is no free press? What happens if there is no democracy? These bloody mics are the limit, but anyway. So, what happens? First of all, I'd bring you to an example. We have to go back to 1943. This was perhaps the worst moment in India since in the last 70, 80 years. That was what you call the Bengal famine. Something like 2 million people died of hunger. Now, if you look at all the terrible things that happened to humanity, to people per se, you can be war, pestilence. I would say a famine is worst. And the reason for that, sometimes a war just happens. You can't do anything about it. Sometimes pestilence happens. And I should know, I'm a COVID survivor. I'm not supposed to be here. I should be upstairs. But the point is, famine can very easily be sorted out. And when it's not, it's an example of democracy not working. To go back to 1943 and Calcutta and the Bengal famine, 2 million people were dying. World War II was going on. Censorship was in place. So because of censorship and the British government, you couldn't do anything. One guy decided that what nonsense. People are dying, we're not supposed to write anything. We'll find a way around it. So his newspaper, the paper I later worked for with great pride, The Statesman, came up with 2 pages of pictures of people dying on the streets. And the impact, you use the word influence, all of us, the influence, it went all the way to British Parliament and it said, okay, if millions of people are dying, let's do something about it. If Ian Stephens of The Statesman hadn't done what he did, more people would have died. Not just 2 million, not just 2.5 million. Now, what happens if he hadn't done anything? Well, we can't say, if my aunt had a mustache, she would be my uncle. But there is an equivalent example of China. Gauri and I were just talking about it. It was in the 30s, and Chiang Kai-shek was, the dictator or whatever. And when this terrible famine happened, it was ignored. And the West didn't much care for it because the information that was coming out was actually ignored because they said, how can it be? He's this man who dresses so well in his imperial admiral's uniform or whatever, field marshal's uniform. His wife speaks such good English. How can it be? And it happened. And 5, 7, 8 million people died. That's a lot of people. What it did affects us even today. Because the people of China never forgave him. And when they didn't forgive him, they put their faith in someone called Mao. And because Mao came in 1949, the problem is we had the 62 war, we had the problem with Tibet, we had Galwan. What I'm saying is, because someone, the media or whatever there was in China in 35, sat tight, sat on their hands, we have a problem today with China. Just think. Which brings me to what Amartya Sen has said. And he has said that wherever there is democracy, there has never been famine. And that's so important because you can influence people. You can say that, look, people are dying of hunger. And that, I suspect, is the most important way of influencing people and the most important thing anyone can influence with. As for the other areas like cinema and all that, I'm not the best person. There are important people here. The only thing I remember is that when I was 15 years old, I saw a film and I said, I want to be a journalist. And probably wrongly, but the film was All the President's Men. And I don't know how many of you have seen it or read the book, but it's because of that that I'm here. Thank you very much.
That's very interesting, Ranjoyji, that a film has inspired you to take on the role of a journalist. And we'll
Yeah,
be
maybe it
speaking
shouldn't
about
have,
cinema.
no?
We'll be speaking more about cinema and its influence to society, but taking the points that you have made on how media is essential for democracy. And we can debate on whether democracy is right or wrong, but we need a free press. Thank you for making those comments. In fact, Gauri, media influences a lot of things. It influences how people vote, and it influences how people think about policy decisions. When COVID came, nobody knew what to think about COVID, right? It's only because of the messaging that they got from different channels of communication, they made up their mind about it. So, of course, there is a whole role that multiple forms of communication have to play. What is your what are your thoughts on media as an influencer before we go forward with more questions?
Thank you for that, Ruby. And thank you for having me here on this wonderful platform. And the good part about speaking after Srinjoy at the dais is I have the luxury to bring everybody back to the present from Chankai Sheikh and the Bengal famine 150 years ago. So fresh and different perspective. When we talk about media as an influencer, Srinjoy is right that media has been around for as long as we can think of, whichever form it may be. The present media is a derivative of the technology that we live in. So whatever technology we are living in, media has always been around and it has always influenced. It has the power to influence, shape, form, dictate, decide, choose whichever adjective you want, whichever word you want. It does so. And it does so at will. And the example that I will give is, take Iran. They haven't heard a word democracy. I don't know when they will. But that has nothing to do with the power of media in shaping the movement that Iranian women are seeing right now. And that tells something, that if media wishes to take up a cause, it can. It doesn't matter whether it's a head of state who has to be humiliated at United Nations General Assembly. And an interview decided months ahead gets cancelled. That did happen this week. The world saw it. And that isn't the end of this debate. I'm not getting into the debate per se. But this is an example to highlight that if media wishes to, it can take up a cause, to possibly its logical conclusion as well. Will that open floodgates for rights for women in Iran and other such countries? Time will tell. If I knew, I'll be a millionaire. I wouldn't be sitting here. But the fact is that media can take up those causes to a logical conclusion and shape the world we live in. The question is, when do they do that? Which are those occasions, those moments in history that media decides that it wants to reshape history? Who gets to decide that? How often we do that? I think answers to those questions decide when and where, in which geographies, in which format, media becomes an influencer. As I said, the times that we live in, everything forms media. What you call social media is mainstream for a lot of people. What media in its different forms has been able to achieve is information leveling. You don't need to be literate to have information anymore. You have a mobile phone, you will get information. Yes, it has challenges related to its veracity, but you will get information. You will have that in the form of videos, television, vernacular media. It will solve all those problems that traditional forms of media always created as high barriers, which created those information asymmetries. I think we are all proud of the fact that in our own households, we will find everybody now, not just those who are sitting on the dining table, but everybody in the room, in the house, having access to equal information. And that is the power of media. Whether it's vernacular, whether it's in whatever format, it allows citizenry to evolve. And that is how it shapes opinions, shapes policies, sets agendas. I'm not using agenda in a derogatory fashion here. It sets agendas because only then, as a citizenry, we awaken to seek answers. We don't need to now be able to read to know what are our powers and our duties as citizens of the world's largest democracy. It also allows media to become vehicles of our aspirations. We want a better future. We're talking about $5 trillion, $10 trillion, $15 trillion economy. We want to be the ones setting global agendas. How do we get there? We first get there by asking our governments to ensure they have a plan in place. And for that, all of us need to be equipped with information. And I think that is where media bridges the gaps. So as I end, I want to say one thing. Being a journalist now means listening to all sorts of slangs. Us versus them. You're either us or you're not with us. Whatever that us is, whoever that us is, doesn't matter. But you get that slang, you get that derogatory responses very often. But sitting here, I feel I'm a proud member of a media industry that is forward-looking in its hope and aspiration to lift every Indian out of any information asymmetry their mothers or their grandmothers had to suffer from, and what their daughters will probably not have to face. And I think that is the biggest achievement, hope, and potential that Indian media has. I'll end on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gauri. Very interesting points you raised. I will come back to it in the question and answer session, especially one about the checking veracity. That's my field. I will come back to that. But before going forward, I also want to talk about art and culture and cinema. These are also important mediums of communication, mass media, and they've probably been around longer than television channels. And art is really powerful because it promotes communication between cultures, between it preserves history. Art takes us beyond boundaries. I mean, it makes us look at things from a very, very new perspective. And for that reason, I wanted to get Pratibha ji in. What is your opinion on media being an influencer, and what direction is it going in, especially when it comes to art and culture?
Thank you, Ruby, and thank you for inviting me to partake in this panel. A lot of people know me as a person from the cultural space, right? But I started off as a journalist.
Oh, wow.
So I did do mass communication, masters in mass communication, and I was working in Doordarshan for some time before I became a professional dancer. So I have written articles for Times of India and all those days in Deccan Herald and all that. And I used to do on-ground journalism, like I think most of you have when you were younger. So the reason I'm saying this is because media and its influence, when we talk about that like 40, 50 years ago, and we talk about it today, there's a huge difference.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a sea change in the influence that media has. Because those days, it was customary for us to read the newspaper in the morning. And whatever newspaper we trusted, our families got it. And our cup of coffee in the morning was with the newspaper. We believed the newspaper. We believed every word that was in the newspaper, whoever had written it, because it came with a certain credibility of that journalist who wrote it, or the columnist who wrote it. So when we saw something in print, we thought of it as authentic, right? So today we see something in print or on television, we are doubting its credibility, first of all. We do not know whether it is the actual truth, the only truth, or whether it's even authentic. So therein lies a huge problem between perception and reality that the sea change in mass media has affected. We know today when we talk about media, we talk about television as a very powerful medium, print, which is almost dying because people don't read anymore. They don't read columns, they don't read editorials. Even then, 50 years ago, they would say, 80% of your consumer base are headline readers, right? So make your headline attractive so that people could then dip into what the text or the body said. Today, they don't even see the headlines because they watch news. And, I'm a performer, so I realized the power of the visual medium. And it's more attractive because when you read, your sensory organs employed or deployed are not just your eyes, your brain, and your thought and your thinking capacity. You're trying to, read what you're reading, trying to understand what is being said there, and you're also trying to put on your thinking cap and wondering whether it's right or wrong, why is it being said in the manner it's being said. But when you see something visually, you don't really have to put your thinking caps on. It's going on, it's a visual thing, you're listening to it, and it's only headlines. There's no text or body in television news these days, right? It's just headlines, and attractive headline, provocative headlines, sensational headlines, whatever they are, headlines, accompanied with a lot of visuals. And visual medium is more powerful than any other, sensory organ, auditory or smell, your sense of smell, or your hearing, your touch. From all these, the visual medium is the most powerful. And that is why television and cinema today are the most powerful media, influencing and shaping lives of our children. Not just our children, ourselves. Like, Sabina ji said, right in the beginning, the entire pandemic, we were glued to our television screens, probably, or, all those movies or whatever we were watching, the serials. Just look at the dramatic impact it has on you. There are positive sides, and Gauri has, very generously spoken about all the positive aspects of mass media, which is true. It can be a powerful tool, it can be an empowering tool, it can give you the right information, it can take up causes that nobody ever knew of, or it can take up causes that politicians discarded and thought of it as something, really small. It can take up causes for people who are underprivileged, who are underdogs of society, and bring them mainstream, get them justice. See, these are the positive, effects of the medium, of television medium. And it has happened. It has happened. A lot of people who have been, disadvantaged, poor, and no access to the powers that be, have got justice because of television medium. And I concur with that, aspect of TV. But there are a lot of negative aspects also. And one of the most, disturbing aspects of television and the visual media is a sense of lack of self-worth. You know, anybody who sees anyone who's more beautiful, lovely, wearing lovely clothes, going in beautiful, for beautiful holidays, and that's all you read about. I mean, we talk about, actors, actresses, their fantastic, fabulous dream lives, dream weddings, dream, holiday destinations, and what happens to the common person, the regular person, who also has aspirations, who's also, maybe somewhere along the way, starts feeling a sense of, a lack of self-worth. I mean, why am I not there? Why am I not, that the kind of aspirational lack of self-worth. And this is something that is most disturbing because it leads to mental health, it leads to addiction, it leads to a lot of other very disturbing kind of, tendencies, psychological, physiological, like I said, addiction. I mean, these days you're hearing about mental health of little children. I mean, that they have mental health problems, they're in depression. When we were young, I don't think we ever heard the word depression, or we never heard that we had to go to a psychiatrist. I just had to share a joke with you. A friend of mine, was speaking to me and said, my 15-year-old daughter says that she has depression. So I told her if I'd ever gone to my grandmother and said, I have depression, should have given me a tight slap and said, now get out of it and go study. You will be out of it. Now this girl was saying I have to go to a counselor, 15 years old, 16 years old. So what happens is the effect of the visual medium and what's happening to others starts transposing on yourself, and you start believing that you're living a role. You're not living yourself. You're not your authentic self. You've lost who you are, what you are, your own little, family, your happiness, your little happiness, how you are, celebrate your own life, your whatever God has given you, and we forget all those things. Why are we not there? And why don't we have that? Without realizing that all those people, are just putting their best foot forward in front of the media. They also may be having enormous problems. Right? So then what happens, once we get to know of their problems, we become voyeuristic.
Right.
And we start peeping into their lives and saying, oh, it's horrible. Someone is consuming drugs, someone is going on some other road, some other, child is, these kinds of things. So literally what I'm trying to say is, what culture does, like the arts. When I speak of culture, I speak of the arts. The arts give you physical discipline, right? Because you practice for years and years and years, and you try to master your own body and your own mind, your own, it's about your body, your mind, your willpower, your capacity. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to improve yourself, not really aspiring. You may want to aspire to be a famous dancer or a famous musician one day, but you know that period is going to be a gestation period of like 10, 15, 20 years later. It's not like an instant, gratification process that happens today when someone becomes a television star overnight or becomes a film star overnight, because they haven't really gone through the process of 10, 15, 20 years of learning, experiencing, having the discipline, sacrificing a lot of things to become who you are, to learn your art form. We use the word tapasya, we use the word sacrifice a lot in our field, in the culture field. Why? Because if you have to be disciplined in one art form, you have to give up so much, so many other things that other people probably have, would do at their age. So it's years and years and years and years of conditioning your mind, your body, your thought process, your reactions, your responses to what is happening around you, because you cannot allow other people to comment on who you are, whether you're worthy of, as a dancer, not worthy as a dancer. So you kind of condition your mind also, so you become stronger. The arts make you strong. They empower you. They give you a discipline that makes you strong. And that is why I advocate that every child should have exposure to the art forms, any art form for that matter, whatever it be. But the child has to have exposure, because after exposure comes appreciation. With appreciation, I know I'm going to stop with this. And once you appreciate, you could be a professional or a non-professional, it doesn't matter. But the fact is that you have to have the discipline that the arts give you for a mentally satisfying, physically, active life. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Pratibhaji, for that. And coming back to, I'm going to take your point where you talked about the cinema's influence and take you to Poonam Dhillon ji. Cinema has had a great, great influence on all our lives. But do you think that, what kind of a role does it play today? Is the influence the same? Is it less? Is it more? What do you have to say? Maybe you have to press the red.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Well, I'm hearing different point of views. I agree with most of them. But today, I think I'm going to be limited to talking about films since I'm the only representative of movies here. But I would say today, films is not isolated. Social media and various forms of social media are integrated into films because that's become a very huge medium of promotion of films. In our good old times, we used to have only print media and maybe some interviews which were given to different publications, and that was our communication with the audience, with the people whom we wanted to attract into the movie theaters and to express to us what we were trying to say. But today, nobody waits for a week or a month for a publication to come out to know what the point of view is or what exactly is happening. It's instant gratification today. So getting people into the movies has also become a challenge because people now are wanting things free of cost, one, because they can get everything into their homes. But also, I would say the influence of films will never go away because the effort which goes into making a movie, it's not like an Instagram reel you make and that's it. It's a thought of process. It's a consolidation of many, many talents, starting from the storyboard, starting from the getting the right actors to the financial aspects of it, to shooting it, then editing it, adding the background music to it. So, it's a whole lot of teamwork and effort. So I think we should never, I would say, take away the effort and the influence of films because it's very thought of. In fact, sometime now when these huge biopics and the historicals are made and people are finding them so interesting, suddenly it seems like an easier form of education to reach out to people, express to them, in a very consolidated and in a very entertaining form how history was in so-and-so time, how a period was, how, social culture was at that time. So I will not segregate films and social media because for me, that is an equal part of our film industry. So you call it a boon or you call it a curse. I mean, it's a little bit of both, I think. And so is films because when we travel abroad, like all of us do, and we see second and third generation of Indians living there, we see them talking Hindi. We see them having love for their motherland, for their culture, for their costumes, for their dances. And you realize single-handedly it's movies which has got them to connect with India. Though the family may not have been to India for 30 years, the second or third generation may have visited once in so many years. But the love of the country is there. The patriotism, the feeling of I'm an Indian is very much, I think, got into their being through the film industry. Certain amount of family values, good culture, all of those are still being indirectly taught to the younger generation. I think a lot of our children today, when they see a certain period film, they definitely do feel that, things have changed now. But that's what we feel. Our things are changing very rapidly. And the fast life of our social media, as somebody said just now, it's giving anxiety to children. It's giving anxiety to people. And that is where we have to get our reins back and just tighten them a little bit. And realize that a film star whom they see looking extremely glamorous wakes up the same way with messy hair, with the same breath, with same everything, and anxiety to start their work, to reach in time, to do various challenges, and the special pressure of having to look good, being a role model. So there are so many aspects of one thing. It's very difficult to segregate and just say, okay, this is it. But I think we'll talk about that in a later form. But I would definitely say that film industry is definitely an influencer to the social norms of our society, not only within the parameters of our own country, but worldwide over. They are kind of brand ambassadors of our country. Today, Bollywood, as they call it, really has gained respect for India in a different way. Wherever we go, sometimes you're in the customs or the immigration line, and they ask you, what do you do? You say you are an actor. Oh, Bollywood. They all know. And they know certain actors by name. So, I mean, I'm not talking about the Indians, I'm talking about the non-Indians too. So our film industry has gained respect, has created a aspirational filmmaking thing in the international world. Today, at any film festival you go, at any film gathering, Indian films is much respected. And in fact, I just came back from the Tashkent International Film Festival, and India was this huge giant there, and people looked up at the industry with so much awe, respect, and love. So I would say that influence can be in different forms, and we'll go into it later.
Poonamji, I want to ask you a follow-up question.
Okay.
Now, we're going, you've seen the technology used in making films change over the years, and now, you yourself are now going to be seen on Netflix, and you're on the OTT space. It's also called on-demand video, which is something that we wouldn't have, it was unheard of a few years ago. What does on-demand video even mean, considering that the process that goes behind creating visual storytelling is just a lot of hard work? So in your own experience, what has the difference been between, the final product releasing on OTT space, Netflix, because everybody has access to Netflix now, or, your series on Disney Hotstar. So how has that been different for you personally?
In two ways, I would say that's a question which we all are aware of today. Firstly, it has put pressure on the filmmakers that they cannot just make run-of-the-mill films, because people will go into the theater only when you give them something special, which they are not going to get sitting at home. But at the same time, you have to be on the OTT platform too, because that's a huge audience and that's your connect with them. So films are becoming larger in life. But in terms of technology, what you asked me, I would tell you, when we were acting in our good old days, when we were doing 3 shifts a day and 12 films at a time, we could not really concentrate on one film, because I had a morning shift. At lunchtime, I would be rushing to my second shoot, and then from there, I would be, if I had a night shoot, rushing there. We were not at all aware of how the connectivity was going to be, how was the continuity, as we call the term in our thing is. And most important, we couldn't see our work right away and improve on it and immediately say, okay, no, this take, it wasn't okay, I want to do one more. Today we have immediate, we see ourselves, we see the shot, we go back and say, we'll take one more, please. I think I could do this better. And in one way, I would say it has improved the quality of filmmaking, because we are able to correct our mistakes right away, not wait for the film to be printed, see the rushes and say, oh my God, this was totally not good. We'll need to create the set again, create the background and do it again. So for the producer, digital has helped a lot, because it's cut down their costs. Actors can ask for 40 takes and not have to, consume so much film. We had actors who would literally be known for the 20, 30 takes, which was very expensive for the producer, because he had to use up raw stock film, and then they had to develop it, and then everything was cost adding. Today it's digital. If they don't like something, they'll delete it and start from the beginning. So it has eased the way of filmmaking a lot. Our sound has become now sync sound, what we call. We are using sounds as we actually shoot. So it helps the actors also, because when you're physically doing a scene, your tone, your ups and downs and your annotations are so different from when you have to stand in front of the mic and do the whole dubbing. So the sync sound has really helped the actors as well as the producer, because he saves time and having the actor right there and use the actual sound. So a lot of technology has changed. Of course, don't want to tell you the technical terms of the cameras and how they have changed, how various technologies have helped filmmakers a lot. The VFX which we see today, the effects which you see, I don't know how many of you have seen
Yes,
from
they're
Astra.
mind-blowing now.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, so I cannot say firsthand, but I've heard so much about the special effects. So today, that is so much easier. You can have 20 people or 100 people and make it look like there are 10,000 people there, So VFX helps a lot. We're creating better impact. And of course, we'll talk about
Thank you
those
very
things.
much for that, Poonamji. I want to come back to Pratibha and Gauriji. You spoke about information leveling. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? But I also want to add a question to that. While it's great that everybody has access to this much information through the different channels of communication and media, but any kid with a phone can shoot anything and put anything on, social media. And I don't want to stick to only social media, but it's also like these days you open TV channels also, they're running what is viral on social media. So it's not like it's not going to come on TV. So there is information leveling, but what are it's become like a two-way street. So what are the challenges that you think? And then I'll come to Pratibha to talk about content curation versus media,
So media is like riding a tiger. It's always that case. You fall off it, it's going to eat you up. Wow. So there's no other way. That's what
that's
biggest,
quite a grim picture.
That's just how challenging it is to deal with media. You don't take a viral video, it becomes the story of the year.
Yes.
You decide to take it, and one day later, fact checkers like you say, you know what, that was such editorial misjudgment because you misreported. And that is across the board, around the world. It's not something that is unique to India. Technology knows no boundaries. Technology operates, globally. So what happens in India happens around the world. And there are no easy answers to this because globally countries have decided and they've come up with norms. You've put in places how you can represent, when you can represent. But that's a catch up. That's a horribly misplaced effort at catching up. You can't catch up. No government can catch up with this kind of pace of real-time information being spread or misinformation being spread. That's what I said. It's like riding a tiger. You miss it, you realize what did I miss? But the larger fact is that the exponential power that media has does raise challenges pertaining to misinformation. And the only way one can resolve or minimize the impact is through certain amount of self-regulation. Increasingly, what I've seen is that all large organizations have invested in some form of fact-checking or the other. Whether it is teams being asked to verify facts or whether, videos are being verified or whether accountability is being sought that, who are these set of people who got this information, and if they are vouching for its authenticity, they will be also accountable for its veracity. This is probably the best that you can do in a very evolving situation. No easy answers to a constantly evolving technological challenge. So this will be a continuous process of learning and self-evaluation. There is no other way governments can deal with this.
Right. Pratibha, you spoke about a time when everybody used to go for the newspaper first thing in the morning for knowing what's going on around them in the world. And, you spoke about credibility at that point of time. However, you also pointed out the negative impacts where you spoke about lack of self-worth. So do you think that it is important to distinguish curated content from actual information that people should be consuming? I mean, the visual medium is very, very influential, but there are two parts to it. One is that I can show you what I want you to see. I can dress up in a new sari every day and, make it appear that I'm wearing a new sari every day, but that might not be the case. So, this happens. People, my skin is so clear, my outfit is better than yours, I did my hair like that. Well, all of that is also there. So should there be a clarification maybe on social media to, on whether this is curated content? Because on television now you have to carry, and newspapers also you have to say that these are paid advertorials, right? So the consumers can then make their own mind about whether, that this is an advertisement, it's not reporting. So This is content curation, and what kind of role do you think in future that it could have in mass media?
I believe that, when we had this information explosion, at that time we were not prepared for it. And by not being prepared for it, we didn't understand what kind of a huge impact it would have on our lives, our lifestyles, our thinking. I mean, I'm not really worried about people's lifestyles, but I'm more worried about what they become internally, how they change internally, what happens to them at the mental level, at their, physiological level, psychological level. That worries me. I don't think, I agree with every word that Gauri has said, and I don't think, it's like riding a tiger, like she said, and you cannot edit material and put it out there. I mean, how much of it are you going to edit? How much of it are you going to censor? What are you going to censor? How are you going to do it? Even governments can't do it. So
even in the advertising space, there's a huge debate about airbrushing and setting unrealistic standards of beauty, and this can be seen in multiple other.
It is, but what has happened now in the dance and music field is, we have Instagram dancers.
Yes.
And we have Facebook dancers. They're wearing Bharatanatyam costumes. They're wearing Kuchipudi, Kathak, Odissi costumes. And they're putting out beautiful videos of themselves. They look beautiful. They, whatever they're doing. And they're just for 3 minutes, right? 2 or 3 minute dancers. And I must tell you one interesting thing that happened. The government of India during the pandemic decided to, do an online competition of these dancers. So they kind of called for applications from all over India, and they said, all of you put up your 3 minute dance videos, and we're going to have experts evaluate you and decide who's going to, get a prize and stuff like that. So a lot of people put up. And I kept getting calls from the ministry saying that the real ones are not doing it. The recognized, dance organizations are not doing it. The recognized dancers are not doing it. We're having a whole new bunch of people who are, uploading their videos. And that's what they should have expected, right? But they said, because the real dancers, the ones who are performers, were waiting it out. They were practicing. They were waiting for the pandemic to get over so that the stages will start and they can do the actual performance. They were not going to put up their 3 minute, 2 minute videos on Instagram. So with those Instagram dancers, the Ministry of Culture called a few of them with whatever, because they had to save their faces. They called them to Talkotara Stadium, and they had some of us go and look at them. Each was worse than the other. And they were all just dancing for 2.5, 3 minutes. But then you had to judge. So everybody got a prize. Everybody was judged. And all of them were asked to perform for Republic Day. That what happened after that. So they were all there on Rajpath performing for the Republic Day. Once that happened, these dancers said, what are we going to get in return? We did all this, what are we going to get in return? Because we never got any prize money or we never got prizes. So the government said, okay, we're going to send you abroad, through ICCR. I'm sure none of you have gone. Now, the ICCR has a process where they empanel artists to go abroad, and those artists are supposed to wait for about 10, 15 years before they go as cultural ambassadors. But because there was a government directive to ICCR to send all these dancers abroad, the ICCR said, okay, now we have to send them. So the DG actually called me and said, Pratibha ji, we just realized they can't dance for more than 3 minutes. What do we do? How many of them are we going to send for one performance,
Yeah.
Each group could not dance for more than 3 minutes. So that is the problem of Instagram and instant dancing. And, and each of them, by the way, these dancers have 30,000, 40,000, 2 lakhs, 15 lakh followers. But are they real performers? Are they real artists? They're dancers. They're singers.
So the sense I'm getting is that while social media is there, and you'll probably have to learn to live with it in a certain way, our traditional way of addressing things, especially in art and culture, in reporting, we cannot lose sight of where we are coming from. Because if we lose sight of that, then we're just going to be able to kind of hold a conversation for 2 to 3 minutes, and it's not going to take us very far. Absolutely. And in turn, because media is an influencer, it's going to affect people's perceptions, policy, government decision making, voting. All of these things are going to get affected because of all of these reasons. I'm going to take your comment to Shinjoy ji. Shinjoy ji, media is like riding a tiger. Gauri ji said. Your comments?
I did that to save some time. To think a little more. A few more seconds you get.
Right.
See, it depends. What I'm thinking is that today you say social media is the worrisome thing, right? Now, 20, 30 years ago, people said, television, 24/7 television is so worrying because no one will watch, everyone will watch TV and no one will do anything else. In the 60s, our parents, or whatever, whoever they were, the elders were very worried. This business of rock music is so bad. We must put an end to it. So every generation, there is something that shocks the elders or the people who are influential. And yet, civilization is such that these little cultures are all incorporated into the civilization, into that entire mass that is called civilization. So 20 years from now, assuming we are all alive, we will ask ourselves, what was this nonsense about social media? Because there will be something else we'll be worrying about. So, yeah, of course, today you can argue that, yes, social media is the tiger which is going to eat everyone up and have us all, between lunch and tea.
Right.
But one day, if you look at our lives, we will ask ourselves, what the hell was it?
Right.
That was this little blip for a few years.
Right.
I don't know if you've seen.
No, Srinjoyji, I think both the panelists here spoke about how we need to kind of take social media with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
But it is here to stay, but it's not the real deal, is what I heard the panelists say.
Yeah, but that's what you think, no?
Right.
There are millions of people outside who swear by it.
Right.
Who said that? Gauri, I think, no? That they swear by social media. No one reads a newspaper. No one watches television because it's all on social media.
That's actually true. Yes.
Now, 20 years from now, there'll be something else. They will say, kya tha hai, social media?
Right.
What was it? Was it some little thing?
Right.
So I'll qualify. It's not riding a tiger. It's like riding a cheetah.
Okay, fine. See, one day I was watching this documentary of the 60s. And this was of these old, elderly, sort of British sahabs who were interviewing Mick Jagger. And this was in the 60s. And Mick Jagger said, who are you guys? You don't matter. Just get lost. Something like that. Today, is he Sir Mick Jagger or something? He is probably, right? So he's part of the system. So all these little things will get incorporated into our civilizational ethos. And it'll be just one more blip. It doesn't matter so much in the long run, all these things.
In the larger scheme of things, I think
They don't
everything is
matter.
adding to our culture eventually. I mean, we cannot ignore that this is happening now.
Yeah,
There's
but
also,
if you, as I said, 20 years when 24/7 television started, people had heart attacks. My God, 24/7 TV. How bad is that? Who cares anymore? It's
Right.
just life.
Pratibhaji also spoke about how when the information boom happened, we weren't prepared. Like, we didn't know what to do with it. And therefore, we haven't been able to figure out what to do with this information boom. Do you have any opinion on whether educating people about media or media literacy as it is called, do you think that is something that could work in the long run? Or is
See,
it
in
important?
the history of civilization, who has educated whom?
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
If in the history of civilization, I mean, if someone sits down and says, yes, today we are going to educate you on X, Y, and Z, you've lost the plot
Right,
because no one cares.
right,
See, once you sit down and say, I'm going to educate you and you and you and you about X and Y and Z,
right,
all those, the you and you and you and you don't
Right.
care. They already know.
right,
And they don't want to know what you have to tell them.
right. Okay.
So, it's life. No?
Okay. All right. I'm just going to quickly open for questions, but I do want to make one addition to what they're saying. I had a fact-checking organization called News Checker, and in our experience, this is quite a menace. All the other panelists have also spoken about, if you end up consuming the wrong information, it would end up influencing your mind in an unrealistic way, in a different way, and you probably don't have, all the information because you're being bombarded by it. So we've been urging people to check before they pass on information, check before they share, a basic Google search. So there are initiatives that we're also running in the hope. In fact, our media literacy initiative, we're finding many takers for it. In fact, we've launched a WhatsApp tip line in the last 6 months, or which is the first 6 months of the year 2002. We have had 30,000 new people who've reached out to us, who are sending us messages and who are asking us, can you please check this for us? Because we don't believe that this is true. So this kind of shows a little bit that people are also being a bit discerning about what they want to believe in. And considering that the field of fact checking is very, very niche, it's very new at the moment. I'm taking this as a positive signal that there are that people are not blindly consuming what they're consuming, that they are trying to, they might not have the access to, but if our endeavor is to provide access to accurate information, we kind of look specifically at things that are very, very viral. Yeah, so with that, I think let's open the floor for questions. If ma'am, yes, please.
Hi, I'm Nidhi Goyal, and I'm on the other side of things, and the huge influence that you guys have on us as a generation is immense. Whether it's the rock thing, the whole generation wanted to ape it and become like that. Whether it was Poonam Dhillon, everyone wanted to look like her. The whole generation you see in her thing wanted to be like her, behave like her. And Shinjoy, we all want to think what the agenda you set for the country for the day, we all want to just go by that. And it just sets a huge responsibility on you guys. Now, I just want to understand how you deal with that. Shinjoy.
Well, the question you asked has very, very vast answers.
Yeah.
But I want to say something which has been on my mind, that, so many times people, they say a lie repeated again and again sounds like the truth and you start believing it. Earlier, we used to say printed word, your written word, hum paper mein dekhte hain, we believe that. That's the biblical truth. So now people will send you remedies, they will send you medical things, all based on, WhatsApp information. And they vouch for it like, it's absolutely has to be true. I saw it on WhatsApp. So, as we were saying, the responsibility has become so immense. If 30,000 people verified with you, think of the millions and billions who are still ignorant and they believe that mujhe to WhatsApp forward aaya tha, and it's made so nicely drafted, the visuals are so good, and the information seems so absolutely correct. So I come from a family of doctors, and for them, every time I tell them my half-baked truth, they get agitated with me. You're educated, stop believing everything somebody forwards you in a day. I mean, everybody's forwarding hundreds and thousands of things. So I think this is one information we need to tell ourselves and control. Don't just pass on information which is not really verified. And gossip about the film industry is told with such absolutely aplomb. Ye to sach hai, main bol rahi hu. I've had friends come from US telling me, ye sach hai, you don't know. I said, maybe I don't know. No, I'm telling you. I said, okay, where did you hear? You haven't been to India for 3 years through the pandemic. How do you know this was the truth? I'm telling you, wo channel mein tumne dekha nahi, usme tumne wo. I mean, that is the source of the biblical truth and information which they absolutely believe in, which is very sad because people are really being fed things. And I would like to talk about trolling a little bit.
Yes, please.
That's become another thing. Kisi ko utke anything they want to say the worst things. In fact, this boycott about the film industry has been so
I was actually
sad.
going to ask you about that, but then I ran out of time.
Yeah. So
But ma'am, the boycott question that you raised, it shows that the power of cinema, right? Obviously, it is
power of
very,
cinema
very
or power of
influential
social
medium.
media? I don't know what it shows really.
No, ma'am. That the attack on the boycott calls, it is because the medium is influential, which is why there are calls for a boycott, right?
So who's calling for the boycott? That is more interesting.
The same people on social media.
But who are these people? They're all nameless, faceless people who will create false perceptions and pass them off as truth. Somebody said something 11 years ago in an interview, so today boycott his films.
You follow news checker for more on that.
I mean, this is really sad and very, I would say, unhealthy way that we should try, as the educated society, each one of us have influence on a whole lot of people. Could be our staff, could be our offices, could be our, people who work under us. We should educate them that jo aap padhte hain, sunte hain social media pe is not necessarily the truth. I'm saying there's good information also, but it's not everything is not the truth.
So there are 3 more questions. I'll take all of them together and we'll answer it. Ma'am, please.
My question is to Poonam Dhillon. I want to ask you, is your industry feeling threatened by the OTT and the television channels? And, we see so many big stars, now they're hosts on TV channels. So are they feeling threatened? And if they are, how are they dealing with it? And perhaps a similar question to Gauri and Srinjoy. Even television, I notice, is less popular with young people. They are more on the OTT or just on Instagram or whatever, Twitter, particularly Instagram is what they favor rather than TV. So how is the TV professionals dealing with that?
Right. Yes, ma'am, you had another question.
Since 2, or I think probably including you, Ms. Dingra, are from the news, Gauri ji, Srinjoy ji, nobody has talked about the bad influence of media, which has invited Supreme Court censure to ask anchors to look deep within themselves about the possible conflagrations they start in society. So my question is this: do you as media organizations ask your anchors to daily read the Prasar Bharati guidelines as if they were the only Bible to be followed in media? If not, is there any way you would do something to implement it? And if you have a backup or an alternative plan to whatever your organizations, you're still on a TED Talk zone, but when it comes to a free-for-all debate system, which your organization has done, what is your backup plan for further fires? Thank you.
Okay, the third question, please. Right. I'll repeat it for you if you like.
Hi, I'm Karishma here, and my question is to Gauri, Ruby, and Srinjoy. Srinjoy just spoke to us about the democracy which is there. So I wanted to know that in India, we are a democratic country and we do practice the freedom of speech. And NDTV was my favorite channel as a child. But what happened with NDTV recently, it was, it came as quite a shock to all of us. So do you still think that media as an influencer has the freedom of speech and people like you are practicing it? Thank you.
Well, I'm not a TV anchor. So I think the 2 people who can answer on that is Srinjoy ji and Gauri ji would like to take it.
Let Srinjoy go first.
Okay.
There are 3 questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Srinjoy, you go first.
Okay. There was let me see. There was one from there, right? I'll start with the last one, right? Whether the press is free or not, right? Right, of course. See, at the end of the day, we have a very free press. If you look at, you have to look at a bouquet, not one channel or 2 channels or 2 newspapers or online sites. The idea is, are there different views emanating at the same time, after which you choose what you want. To put it as simply, even crudely, it's like going to a coffee shop for breakfast in a hotel. There are so many things that you can eat, but you choose to eat 3 or 4 or 5 of them. Similarly, in the media space, as I said, in different newspapers, channels, magazines, God knows what else there is, there are different views all at the same time. You, as the consumer, have the responsibility to choose what you want. It is the same in every country in the world. If you look at, let's say, Britain, you have a left-wing paper like The Guardian. You have a right-wing paper like the Daily Telegraph and the Times. It's the same everywhere. So there will, if it's a democratic country, there will always be a free media. You can't have one or the other. That's how it is. Someone may have bought this or that. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, are all views from society coming up? If the answer is yes, then we don't have to worry. That's your question. Ma'am, yours was about
Prasar Bharati guidelines, the debates, accountability of anchors, and Supreme Court.
Yeah, every media house has a responsibility, and I'm certain that people are aware of their responsibilities and they go with it. There was a third question. Ma'am, I think it was from here.
Does the television platform feel threatened by
youth,
social
right?
media? Yeah.
There are planners who look ahead. I'm a poor sod, I only work from day to day. Okay. So there are planners who look ahead and say that, okay, this is happening now. How is technology going to change things? How will things be different? The one thing I draw a lot of inspiration from is once upon a time people said, newspapers will die. After all, television is here. Then they said, black and white television, radio is here. So then they said, radio will die because television has come. Somehow, every media has found a place. Now you're saying, perhaps rightly, that television will die because, there is something else that is there. Who knows? Again, 20, 30, 50 years later, what is, the big thing today will mean nothing. Or will mean less, but it will be there. Nothing goes away, really. I mean, you can argue that, no one looks at a stone tablet and, makes inscriptions on it. But beyond that, everything is really there.
Would you like to add something to that, Gauri?
Your question, I think, was answered by him, or do you want me to add to that? Okay. I'd like you to answer it. Oh, okay. So yes, the 3 questions. And this should broadly answer all the 3 concerns, which is, Supreme Court guidelines, freedom of speech, and why television is catering to only one audience tastes. One is we are assuming that media itself doesn't respond to viewer tastes. It does, constantly. One such example is there is this particular program which is called Speed News. It was started as an experiment because of market feedback that folks want to know a lot of things quickly. They don't have time. So 3 minutes, 30 stories. It came down to 1 minute, 100 stories. And now every channel, irrespective of which spectrum of story that they are dealing with or addressing, have Speed News. Because audience wants to have everything, 2-minute Maggie, like that. So like that, they want to have everything fatafat. So what you have fatafat in Hindi, you have Speed News in English, in all genres. So media itself is constantly evolving. As far as diktats by courts are concerned, they are very serious and they define a very clear framework under which organizations need to function. And that framework is irrespective of employees. because that defines the space in which they are mandated to function, irrespective of who the CEO of the company is, the owner of the company is, or the anchor of
That's
that
what my
particular show
point is. Don't you think they've brought it on? Why should the Supreme Court have to come in when you have a self-regulatory mechanism? All media says so. Shouldn't you have been regulating yourself before you allow this? This was supposed to be fourth estate. So take it from there.
So, so the good part about being a television journalist is you don't get baited easily. So I'm not going to, so I'll resist that bait. But the fact is that a lot is happening as far as media itself is concerned. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It responds. Just like what happened at Capitol Hill, India is also facing its own set of challenges. And a lot of it could also be made worse because of technology. The whole discussion we had about the power, the exponential power of providing information quickly also gets magnified in any crisis that a media organization faces. And which is why there is no other option but to probably evaluate some mandates. Individually, I don't think they can be cast in stone because nothing as far as media is concerned can be cast in stone. It's responding. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's constantly evolving. So these mandates would probably be broad guidelines to agree to perform in, to probably continue work in. But can they be cast in stone? I don't think so. And as far as freedom of speech is concerned, as I said, media doesn't exist in a vacuum. They respond to political, social, cultural changes around the world. Jeff Bezos, richest man on earth, owns Washington Post, doesn't like Trump's party. He never did. Everything flew from there, right? But that is also a question that should be posed there. What happened to freedom of speech? Because media doesn't exist in a vacuum, somebody's got to be the owner, right? Somebody owns, it's still a company. So that holds true around the world. Media responds to changes that happen around the world. Hope I have addressed some of those.
And thank you very much for those answers. And I would like to add a certain thing in response to that. Media definitely does not exist in a vacuum. And there are those concerns. There are multiple other concerns also. But this is an ever-evolving process because everything has to be, philosophically debated within the community also. That if we choose this as a remedy, then would it lead to further problems or not? Or if we choose a second possible solution as a remedy, what would that lead to? So as she was talking about instant gratification, we can't even, take quick fix solutions, because I suppose quick fix solutions are what has got us here. And it's not that this is not a concern within the industry in general. And as Shanjoyji was saying, that there are various point of views that are available for you to consume. How you consume media is also equally on your shoulders. And with that, I'm going to close this discussion. Thank you very much for Vicky Flo for having all of us here and helping us share our thoughts with everybody.
Whoever controls the media controls the mind. These are famous words by Jim Morrison. So true. Media has become an inseparable part of society and the lives of citizens, and that's why it is necessary to understand its influence on people. From economy to entertainment, and from politics to beauty, everything is now influenced by media. It is my honor to propose a vote of thanks for today's session, where we had the good fortune of listening to the movers and shakers of the media and entertainment industry. What a power-packed session we had. With Poonam Dhillon ji, Srinjoy Chaudhary ji, Pratibha Prahlad ji, Ruby Dingra, and Gauri Divedi. On behalf of Flow, I would like to thank each one of you for giving us your valuable time and addressing us. The session was not just inspirational, but highly informative. I thank all the past presidents and GB members for being here today. Thank you to our sponsors for the year 22-23, Platinum sponsors, KEI Wires and Cables, GHCL, Associate sponsors, Ardenox and Ahuja Sons. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you.
The flight of Anupam Kher and Navika Kumar just landed about 10 minutes back, so they're not. We've asked them not to come. Sorry about that today. No, it will take more than an hour because barish ke karan there's quite a bit of a jam. Yeah. Sumita, can I request you to just give a gift to Poonam ji? Yeah.
Thank you, all of you, for being such wonderful audience. Thank you so much. Of course, there's so much more we could talk, but constraints of time, it was a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Sumita actually is a manufacturer. We create articles. Thank you so much. हाँ नीचे आके लेंगे इधर ही ठीक है तो chairs back and we can Neela, please join us.
You guys are probably better at it. I don't get photographed that often.
Can you just get a picture?